Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today what we're going to do is we are going to overhaul this Schwinn. This is a Schwinn Volare from 1978. This thing has all about 100 miles on it, so something tells me that the grease is probably a little caked and a little bit original. The cables are in great shape. The hoods obviously are trashed. I think I could tear them off by hand. Here we go. Good eating. So we're going to take this thing apart. Now we're going to do something a little different compared to different videos I've done in the past or other videos I've done in the past. And we are going to overhaul this bike and show every single step. Almost like a how-to. I'm going to show you what tools I'm using, what tools you're going to need, and that kind of thing. So it should be a lot of fun. While I'm doing it, I'm going to actually have a little chat with you about why these Schwinns exist. Why do these Japanese-built Schwinns, I think this one's a Panasonic, why do they come about? Why couldn't Schwinn build one here? So we're going to talk about that as well. So buckle in, and we're going to have some fun. Now for a brief overview on this bicycle. A Schwinn Volare was built in Japan by Panasonic, and boy, they made a beautiful bike. Some people call it the baby Paramount. It had Reynolds 531 tubing and chrome drops, chrome fork blades, just beautiful chrome lugs and fork crown. Just a beautiful bike for its day. And my understanding, it was about $100 less than what a Schwinn Paramount would cost. Full Durace. I got some new hoods for that. And Durace brakes, cranks. Rear derailleur is a Shimano crane, which was the Durace of the day, if you will, and a Durace front derailleur. So we're going to take this baby apart, put her back together. Oh, by the way, we're going to take off the dork disc and the reflectors. But I'm going to keep those because they're historic. That's how they came. Got some beautiful large flange Durace hubs. For disassembly, we have some tools here. We have a full Allen wrench set, a couple head wrenches for 32 millimeter for the headset. We got a crank, a bottom bracket tool, which will remove the fixed cup, and the ring spanner for the other side. We have a pin spanner for removing the cup, the non-fixed cup. We've got a crank puller and a crank wrench. Now you could use a thin wall socket instead. This here, you'll see me use that a little bit later on, what that's for and what that's about. Regular screwdriver, 8, 9, and 10 millimeter wrench, chain tool, pedal wrench. Now you could probably use 15 millimeter wrench as well, plier, and a mallet. Let's get to work. Everybody does this a little differently. I like to start off by taking off the chain. While you're pushing out the rivet, make sure you don't go too far and push the rivet all the way out. So you got to take a feel for it. When it starts getting a little tougher, that's when I pull it out. Oh, this chain needs some work, boys and girls. It's dry. There you go. I probably could have pulled that pin a little bit more. It's the Shimano Uniglide chain. Great shape. Let's remove some wheels. Made my first mistake. I'd recommend doing the pedals first, because sometimes you need the chain hooked up to get the pedals off. Makes it a little bit easier. But I think I got lucky. If you're ever wondering which way your threads go on your pedals, put your wrench on. Over the top towards the back will always loosen. Over the top towards the front will always tighten, and that's true on both sides. Let's unhook some cables. I do plan on keeping these cables. They're in great shape. They're original. Add a plier to your list. Forgot about that. Take off the end there. These are pretty heavy duty braided cables. Now these brake cables are a little frayed. I think I might be able to just cut them here and be fine. I really would like to keep them. Let's remove some derailleurs. This one's a 6mm. Front derailleur is a 9mm. Now as you remove the stem, whoops, yep, it's 6mm. This one's pretty loose actually. Oh, this is gonna come right out. That was never properly lubricated. Look at that. Most stems have a wedge, and when you tighten down this wedge, this kind of pushes down, tightens it up within the steer tube. Sometimes it's an internal wedge, but either way, there's some kind of wedging. This should be lubricated. This never was, quite oddly. You can tell. It's probably never been taken out either since it was built. Sometimes you have to tap the top of this with a mallet to knock the wedge loose. The fact that I didn't have to kind of told me something. So yeah, wasn't in there very tight. The next step is removing the cranks in the bottom bracket. This is where a lot of people get intimidated, but it's actually quite easy. And I'm going to try to tell you every step and the things to look out for so you don't have any problems or create problems for yourself in the future. But it's really not that hard. The next tool we're going to use is a crank puller. Now, these pullers come with different threads. 90% of them use the same thread. Seriously. Suntour, Shimano, Campagnolo. You get into some of the French brands, you might need a special puller size. And if it doesn't go in smoothly, then you know you got the wrong one. But 90% of the time you get a park puller, it'll take care of business. First thing is remove the dust cap. This takes a 5mm. Look at that, it's not even tight. Yours might take a regular screwdriver. There you go. The steel one. Pretty, looks brand new. 95% of the bikes either has a 14 or a 15mm bolt in here or a nut. Just put your wrench on it or your socket, and it has regular threads. In this case, they're not very tight. Sometimes they're very tight. Give it a spin, get it out of there. Also, do not forget to remove the washer if there is one. Take a good look inside, make sure there's nothing other than the crank and the spindle, no washer. Now, as we know, these cranks are basically brand new. The threads are really clean. You might want to have to clean these out. Depends if you had a dust cap or not. And you see, I'm just going in clockwise as normal. It's going in very, very smooth. Make sure you're at least getting 5 or 6 threads in there when you can, because without that, when you use the puller, it'll pull the threads right out. Like that. Now that's pressed up against the spindle. Yeah, this one's like butter. Too easy. Sometimes you got to work at that a little bit. Give it a little pressure. Now you can see here that when you take that crank off, a lot of hidden dirt you can get out. This one here is pretty smooth. A little dry, but smooth. Once again, I think this bike has no miles on it. This is a Japanese bike, therefore it has an English threaded bottom bracket. An English threaded bottom bracket, the non-drive side, which is this side here, has a right-handed thread. Counterclockwise, we'll remove the lock ring. Oh no, I don't have the right tool, but guys, a ring spanner, or a pin spanner, I should say. This one's green. Park has a red one, which probably fits better. This is a little large, but actually it does work because this cup is actually fairly loose. Once again, counterclockwise. If you don't have a spanner, you could put try to use a Phillips or something in a punch. I don't recommend it, but you can do it if you don't want to buy a spanner. Let's see what it looks like, guys. Let's see. Huh, does not look bad. Doesn't look even dry. Black, it's black. Now this comes out. You got your spindle and your bottom bracket sheath. This keeps dust and everything from coming down and getting into your grease. So we have our Park Fix Cup tool. We're going to put that on. Now, when you put a lot of pressure on this to loosen it, the wrench could slip off. I hate that. So here we go. We got this bolt, massive bolt, and we're going to put that through with a washer. Put the washer on the other side, and your nut. We're going to hand tighten this to be actually fairly snug. This is English threading, which means on the drive side, you're going to have a left-handed thread. So to remove it, we are going to go clockwise. Here we go. Let's give it a try. Ready? That wasn't too tight. Here we go. It's loose now. We get rid of this bolt and go the rest of the way. Yeah, now it's moving pretty easily. That grease is a little thick. Well, I learned something new today. This is a Dura-Ace headset, and it's steel. To be honest with you, I didn't know they made a steel one. As you can see, I have the wrenches close together, so you can just squeeze them and pop it loose, just like that. While you're removing your top cup, be careful. You might have loose ball bearings. I know these were going to be caged. I wasn't worried. If they're loose, they're all going to fall to the ground. So make sure you accommodate for that with a bucket or box or something. Yep, pretty cruddy. Hey guys, let me take a moment to ask you to subscribe. If this is the kind of content you like, hit the subscribe button and that little ring-a-dingy bell that just lets you know I posted a video, and you'll see next oncoming videos. We're going to see this video is going to be done in a few parts. It's the best way for you to be notified that the next video is up. Now I think I'm going to keep the shifter on, but I'm going to take off this this bottom bracket cable guide just so it's easier to clean. Now, with the exception of the seat and seat post, we pretty much have everything off the bike. I'm going to keep the shifters on. They're functioning great. There's no point in putting any stress on that strap. So I'm going to clean up the cups, flush out the bottom bracket a little bit, clean off the frame, and then we'll start reassembly. I would say if the grease is really thick here, use some clean streak or some degreaser, but honestly, this is coming off so easily. I'd rather not use the chemicals if I don't have to. Well, I told you I was going to clean out the bottom bracket, but look at this. It's like brand new from the factory. What I would do if I were you guys is take some either a lubricant like a Tri-Flow or even a degreaser, get it in there, take a towel, wipe it out, just make sure they're cleaned up. Oh, this thing's pretty. Can't believe this thing's a 78. Just ridiculous. For those of you that are new with this process, I'd recommend laying everything out on your table the same way, in the same manner you took it off. So, obviously this is first. You should have a little washer. And this one here has a little key washer. Then you're going to have the outer plate. Sometimes, let's pull this off. Sometimes there's an inner plate. This one has one. Sometimes it's one piece. Sometimes there's two. And here's that inner plate. Before you put it down, make sure it's flat and you can use it each way. I'm going to put it with the bottom facing the ground. Check the other side. Sometimes there's a plate there, but not in this case. There should be a washer. Yep. The Durace, it's got a little washer. There you go. Sure glad I'm taking these apart. I'm telling you what, they're dirtier than I thought. Look, this is flat. Looks like it's universal. You could put it on either way. This here is actually just some old grease. You can tell. Let's get rid of that. And be really thorough. I'm not going to show all of it, but be really thorough getting all that crud out of there. I just love the detail of these old parts. Now for reassembly, put a little bit of light oil on this washer, a smidge of grease on the inside of the shifter on both sides. Now if you have a Durace shifter, keep in mind you have this little pin. The little pin is essential. Don't lose it. It will fall out, as I just learned. And when you put that on, the pin limits the shifter from going too far down. And if you remember, we got our inner plate. I have a little bit of grease on each side of that. Then we have our inner plate here, or outer plate. Then we have our outer plate. And we put this on. We got that little pin there. See that little pin? Let's see if we get close up. The little pin right there on the edge near my thumb. That goes into a hole that's in this top plate. So when we get close, that creates friction. So we get close, it's kind of tricky. You got to key it in. Let's see, I think it's on the top there. Here we go. I'm going to key it in. Now I'm going to tighten it. This is a tricky shifter. Perfect. Well, I'm excited now, guys. It's time to reassemble this thing. Yeah, let's start by putting a fork on and overhauling the headset. So let's clean this thing up. Back when I worked in a shop in the 80s, all the top line bikes we had on the floor, we were a Schwinn store. I started in 1982. We're all Japanese made Schwinns. I didn't think twice of it. I just thought that was pretty normal. Turns out it wasn't. I learned that throughout the 70s that Raleighs were made by Raleigh. Rosses were made by Ross. Fujis were made by Fuji. Why are these Schwinns made in Japan? And then I had a great talk with Richard Schwinn. I did an interview with him about a year ago, maybe less than a year ago. You could check that out. It's more about the Waterford brand than it was a Schwinn brand. But I learned something. I learned that Schwinn used to have, over 100 distributors, well over 100. So they had no control over the distribution network. Well, there's no price integrity or anything. Joe from Joe's Heating and Plumbing could be a Schwinn distributor. Not good for the brand. Non-bike shops were putting these things together. So they took control without getting into the detail. They dropped all of their suppliers and they opened up their own distribution centers. Well, out of those over 100 distributors, I think maybe, I forgot how many it was, maybe I'm going to guess 20 or 30 were actually serious bike distributors. They needed other brands to sell. So Schwinn, in a sense, created their own competition. That's when you saw all the French bikes come in the 70s. You had your Motorbacans, Peugeots, Genet, you name it. All the Japanese, Fuji came in, Centurion, all these good bikes. Well, guess what? Schwinn had nothing to compete with them. Most of the Schwinn bikes were made in Chicago, and they were fillet brazed. They were heavy, kind of like this Schwinn Super Sport here. Beautifully done, very high quality, but very heavy. and they needed to compete. They didn't have enough capacity to do the lug frames in-house. Even when Schwinn couldn't build enough Paramounts, they went to a gentleman named Don Mainland to build more out of Wisconsin. So they couldn't produce enough lug frames. They had to compete. They went to Japan. They actually went to Panasonic, and that's where these bikes were born. The first one, I believe, is the Schwinn World Voyager, like my orange one here. This is a 73, and it's a beautiful bike. You see chrome lugs again. So with the World Voyager, then after the World Voyager, the Voyager 2, the Latour, bikes like that came out, and they were lightweight. The one you just saw was actually the same exact bike as a Panasonic. I mean, all the way down, every spec was the same, with the exception that Panasonic had more chrome on the seat stays. So at the time, Schwinn's were, $375, $450, that range. And they wanted other bikes to compete. So this bike came out in 77. Now this one's a 78. And I don't know, some people call it the baby Paramount because it had Reynolds tubes, it had the chrome lugs, it had the more inexpensive but high quality, well-performing Dura-Ace components. Make sure you put the cage down on this particular one. And you go. Cage down again on this particular one. So back when I first started working at a shop, there's a gentleman named Jerry Neneve. Hopefully he's watching today. Really admired him, great godly man. And he was a good mentor. And he had a Voyager that was red with chrome lugs. I'm like, man, this is the coolest thing in the world. Anything with chrome lugs really turned me on. Here we go. So I was bound and determined to get one. I ended up with the chrome Voyager from 1982. Now this is like adjusting any bearing. You want it to be as tight as you can without it hanging up. Let's do this. One on the top, one on the bottom. We're going to tighten them together just gently. Feels pretty good, but I'm going to make that final adjustment a little bit later with the front wheel on. Some people don't like to do that, but this bike's already broken in, so it'll work out just fine. So I'll tell you what, guys, I never knock the old Schwinns. I love them. These Japanese-built bikes are just so wonderfully done, and they built them through the 80s as well. Some are great, some are okay, but this is top of line, no question. Hey, let's start the bottom bracket. So you got your fixed cup that goes on the drive side, and your bearing, adjustable cup, and your bearing. Your bottom bracket sheath goes in the middle, and your lock ring. Before I use a degreaser, I knock the loose grease out of it. No point in clogging all that up. Get it nice and clean. You're not gonna see me polish this whole thing, but get the grease out of it first. If you're wondering, I'm using Clean Streak, White Lightning it's called. Great stuff. So normally I like to collect bikes that were built by the companies that said that they built them. And the only exceptions I have, there's few, but the Schwinns are the main ones. I really like them. I got a few. I got a Super Sport SP, Voyager, the Volare, and I'd love to have one of these in my size. So if you guys have one, let me know. And it's gonna be hard to get rid of this one. This one's like brand new. While assembling this, put some grease in the cup, spread it around. You can be fairly generous, but you don't have to go too much into it. You don't have to have too much. But I like it to be a little clumpy around the bearing. Might even put some on top of the bearing. Now, every time I overhaul a bottom bracket, everyone says I'm putting the bearings in wrong. Just so you know, there's two different kinds of bearings. This is a Campagnolo, and also some of the newer Dura-Ace looks similar. Your cage is bowed, and you can see the cage is on the outside. The cage is here. Now, you can see this bearing. This one goes cage up. And then when you put your spindle in there, it rolls on these bearings. Campagnolo And this style bearing is just the opposite. As you can see, your spindle would rub right on top of that. You don't want that. So this one goes cage down. Now you could also use loose ball bearings, usually a 1/4 inch, sometimes not. So pay attention to what you're taking out before you put new ones in. So let's put some grease on here. Let me go just a tiny bit more. Some might think that I'm using too much, but you know, I love you guys, but I'm trying not to care too much. I've been doing this, or what other people think. I've been doing this for, oh my gosh, 45 years. And I never had a bike fail or fall apart on me. I must be doing something right. There we go. And the bearing will spread that around. There we go. Ding, 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 ding. Let's get this baby installed. I got a little grease on my fingers here. I'm gonna make sure there's some on the cups. The guy that takes this apart next will thank you, or the gal. A little bit of lubricant as well on the threads. Once again, English threads. So I'm going to turn it clockwise until I hear a click, and then I go backwards. Don't force it, guys. Whatever you do, don't force these cups in. Make sure that the threads catch properly, because if not, you could ruin the bottom bracket. Or at the very least, you'll have to rechase it with a new tap. I want this to be really tight, so I'm going to put my bolt back in with the washers so it doesn't slip off. Stepping in front of it, I get a good grasp. And this has got to be a good three grunts, all right? You want that tight. If that's not tight, it'll come unraveled while you're riding. That's no fun. It's happened to me once, just once. Now, the idea behind the bottom bracket sheath is it goes in like this and creates a seal. So put that in. Should center itself. Now here's my bottom bracket spindle. It's all nice and clean. One end is longer than the other. That's the drive side. Now, before you put it back in, inspect it for pits. This thing really has almost no miles on it, and there's no pits right here on the bearing surface. If it's really pitted, consider putting a new bottom bracket or at least a new spindle in. Once again, make sure there's a little bit of grease on your threads. This is a right-handed thread, should go right in. Which it does, man. It's like butter. When you're making your final adjustment, snug it up, back it off. Put your lock ring on. You want the spindle to turn freely and smoothly, but you don't want there to be free play. Hear that? So we're actually going to snug the bottom a little bit, and then we're going to lock the lock ring. Keep in mind, when you lock down this lock ring, it'll pull the cup out slightly and loosen the bearing, just slightly. This will take some trial and error, but eventually you'll get it nice and smooth. Right now, I think we're in good shape. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my greasy fingers, I'll rub them on the spindles. As you can see, there's not a lot of grease on there, it's just wet. Some people don't like that. Some people like to keep it dry. I ain't going to argue with you. This is the way I like to do it. It's worked for years. Next, we're going to install the cranks. This is a first generation Dura Ace crank, and if you look at it, look at that. Not a scratch from a toe clip strap or anything. I debated on not taking these apart, but you know what? I got this oil. It's kind of yellowed. So we're going to take this apart, clean it up, and put it back together. Most of these chainring bolts are 5mm. Pretty tight. I don't think I've ever worked on a bike this clean. I'm just going to use the clean streak to get rid of the yellowing, which is basically old oil. Now, you might have to scrub a little bit more on your bike, which is fine. You might even use the mother's chrome polish on the aluminum. It would bring the sheen right back, usually, and make it nice and shiny. But actually, now that this stuff's on there, I'm taking quite a bit of old oil off, I could tell. Now I was able to get most of the yellow off, but not all of it. Looks pretty good. For an old bike, it looks fantastic. But you guys know I'm a little spoiled when it comes down to finding these garage queens. I say call them garage queens because they sit in the garage or they sit in the basement and they haven't seen much mileage. Keep in mind your chainring bolts sit in this little groove here. If it's flat, you probably got it wrong. So in this particular case, we'll put the 52 right here, right behind the crank. It really doesn't matter, guys. But some people are sticklers about that. And I get it. People like symmetrical things. Make sure you get these snugged up. Sometimes you have to hold on to this in the back. I can't find my little tool that goes in there. And so if you have a problem with this spinning, you know, you could put something in there to key it in, but it could be tricky. These are sticking really well. I do have a little bit of lubricant on the bolt and the washer. Take our 14mm crank wrench, or you can use a thin wall socket and tighten her down. For those who need a torque spec, I'll put the graphic on the screen. Been doing this so long, I firm it up, give it a couple grunts, and we're good. After I do a couple rides, I'll tighten it again. Hey guys, that is the end of part 1 for this video. I'm not sure how many parts there's going to be, but what I would ask you to do is hit the subscribe button and that little bell so you know when the next episode comes up. Hopefully it will be within the week. We'll see because the holidays are coming. Next video, we're going to be taking apart the hubs, re-greasing those. We're going to be putting together the brakes, the derailleurs, put all that stuff, tape the bars, string it up. I don't know if I can do that one more video. We'll give it a shot. But if you guys have tips of the trade, put it in the comment section below. People tend to read that and learn more. I am not the end-all be-all of this type of thing. I'm pretty good at it, but you know what? You guys all have your own tricks and your own suggestions, so put that down below. Hey, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next video. Coming up, guys, we're going to be building this 1995 GT Edge aluminum. That's going to be kind of fun. We also got this Pinarello Volta. How do you pronounce that? Pretty excited about this too. And these are going to be some 90s builds. You don't see too many of those on my channel, but you may see a few coming up. So stay tuned for that.